As business owners, it can be really daunting to take on the new social media platforms that seem to be popping up all the time. But that doesn't mean that we should hide in the shadows, especially when it comes to inbound marketing. Instead, we need to take the principles of inbound marketing and apply them to these new platforms in order to find success. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this episode of Solving Inbound. Let's do it. Welcome back to another episode of Solving Inbound. My name is Connor Delaney, joined by the wonderful John Becker. And today we're going to dive into taking inbound and applying it to a lot of the new social media platforms. So we're going to take you through one of the recent headlines within the inbound marketing space. And then we're going to take a deep dive into applying inbound principles to platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And then John's going to bring us our stat of the day and we'll wrap up this episode. So John, why don't we dive into the inbound headline that we want to focus on in today's episode? And that comes from TikTok.
Yeah. And I think, Connor, before we even get there, like you're totally right. I think business owners and marketers in general are going to look at new platforms, new emerging technology, and you kind of see it either through a threat lens or an opportunity lens. And that language comes from Liz Wiseman, author of Impact Players. Do you see something new as an opportunity, or do you see it as a threat to your confidence, a threat to what you've done before? And I think especially for people of a certain generation, you hear about TikTok and you kind of roll your eyes and think, okay, it's just a bunch of kids dancing or something. It can be. Do I need to learn this new thing? Is this something that really is going to impact me, or is this just a trend that is just social and is not commercial at all, and I don't need to be on it? And statistics say otherwise. And I want to caution, I want to be really clear about this. We are not, we don't want you to be like the Steve Buscemi from the meme where you have your hat on and the skateboard and you're walking around high school and you look like you're 70 and you're like, what's up, kids? That does not work. We're not asking you to chase trends or to practice dance routines or anything like that. We are instead asking you, as you said in the beginning, Connor, to apply the principles of inbound to new situations, which is what we get paid to do, which is how our business grows, et cetera. So Connor, you were particularly connected to this stat. So talk to me about how much people are consuming information on TikTok today.
Yeah, so we found an article and it's on what's new in publishing. And in this article itself, we talks about how consumers are shifting from the more traditional news sources into what we call side door sources. And side door sources are defined as something like social media, maybe an aggregate platform that's taking in all this information and presenting it to you. It's how consumers are taking in information in different ways. And in particular, it talks about how consumers have shifted from the traditional news sources to about 40% of the news in particular, but in the article generalizes it to information as a whole, has shifted to these side door sources, which means that consumers aren't going to your traditional news outlets, or they're not searching in particular for what they're looking for. They're looking for the most up-to-date and speedy trends. And that's allowing you to, that means that people are consuming information differently. It doesn't mean that they're going to go and find you in the ways that they may have found you even a couple of years ago. TikTok didn't exist a few years ago. And I know I bring up that platform in particular, but those platforms didn't exist a few years ago, and they weren't used this way until much more recently in order to consume information and to learn and to educate themselves.
I think an important sort of subplot to all of this is the idea that we have to make our information highly consumable and ideally highly shareable. I think we have a tendency often to because we might be talking about making videos about presenting about something that we know very well. So it's easy to get really in depth. It's easy to, provide a 10-minute answer when what people might really want is a 30-second answer. And that takes a ton of discipline to hold back, to be concise, and to convey the essentials. But TikTok is a short form platform. We'll talk in a minute about YouTube Shorts, same thing. Instagram Reels or Instagram Stories as well, things that are video, that are really consumable and are short. And if you're trying to educate your audience. And really that's the principle of inbound marketing, audience education. If you're trying to educate your audience, there's real value to being brief, to getting what you have to say out there quickly, making it really consumable.
Right. And the thing to remember here, and I know it's like, oh, we can't manage a bajillion platforms, like we're already on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever it is. Find where your consumers are at. And it's such a 101 social media best practice, but you don't need to have every tool. But the tools that we're, again, going to talk about today, so many people are on, and they use them all for different reasons. And some people, the emergence of this educational side of social media, and a lot of people think about the negatives. They think about the trendiness of it and how things can disappear right away. People also really enjoy the educational piece. They like to learn on there. And these platforms want to garner to that. They don't want to hide you away from that, but there's certain parts of the algorithm that can get really stuck. The other thing that came to mind as you were talking there, John, is just how important it is for you to consider diversifying the way you produce the same content. If you're writing a blog article, which we've talked a lot about blog content on here, and then you make a long form YouTube video, you can also make a short-term YouTube video. And that allows you to touch base with different consumers who are looking for different kinds of content. Like you said, some consumers want to read an article. They want the in-depth written out, and that's how people learn best in some form. Other people want to hear a long form video. A third group that's really emerging recently is people want to learn quick, snappy, nuggets of information that they can apply. And these platforms allow you to do that. They allow you to apply the information that you're seeing, and you give them just a little bit. You can take, a blog article that has 6 or 7 action items, and you can create 6 or 7 small videos on it. And that allows them to say, I'm going to do number 1, and then maybe I'm going to jump to number 3, and then number 7, and I'm going to go back. And you can do each of them, but you can produce short-term videos that you're still engaging with your audience, and it's potentially going to generate business for your company.
Yeah. And the only thing I would possibly add to that, Connor, is I think those 3 camps that you talked about might not be as different as you think. As not you, Connor, but you collectively.
Sure.
So a lot of times when you,
it's
Connor,
an interesting thing. Yeah.
a lot of times when people are reading your article, they're probably reading a headline. Maybe they're reading like a subheader or a graphic, and they're scanning through. They might only be spending 30 to 60 seconds on it. And I think if any of us marketers are serious and we're looking at our YouTube stats, what's your viewer retention rate? How much of your video are people actually watching? It might only be 60 to 90 seconds of a 3, 5, 10-minute video. So I think there is a tendency to want bite-sized information and consumable information. And I think that's true. And we're talking about TikTok, but I think TikTok is taking a similar trajectory to a lot of social media platforms. Like it starts off being something cool and hip that all the college kids are using or something like it. But pretty quickly, and I don't know that I have a great insight on this, but I think pretty quickly brands start infiltrating, and some do it well and some don't. And I know, like when I first was on Instagram, it was a photo sharing platform with friends because Facebook felt like too kind of ad heavy. Nowadays, I follow more brands on Instagram than I do people. It's kind of slowly changed to, I'm following news outlets, I'm following magazines, I'm following bloggers and influencers, all sorts of things, like some people I don't know. And I think something similar has happened to TikTok, that it's easy to dismiss it as, again, just the like kids doing dances in their bedrooms. Not so. And the statistic that you brought in is saying that, Connor, that people are consuming content, information, news on TikTok and similar platforms at a tremendous rate. And you don't have to worry about you missed this trend and you're kind of too late to the party. For any of these social platforms, check them out and see what they're like. And it's easy to get it wrong, again, to kind of misread the room and try to be that guy hanging out who doesn't belong there. But as long as you cling to the inbound principles of providing information that's helpful to consumers, then you're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah. And I think that transitions well into the main topic for today. And again, we bring up the idea of TikTok and the platform, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is like the emergence of short form content. And you think about so Facebook's around for a while and then Twitter emerges, and Twitter is this short form platform that really changed the way that rapid fire information gets shared. It was the same with like Instagram, and then Snapchat gets introduced, and Snapchat was this instant messaging, instant, image sending tool, and then it disappears. And these trends shift and their platforms change a lot. And as the biggest ones are going to emerge victorious, but short form content has continued to emerge, and short form video content in particular. Again, you look at, like you mentioned, with Reels, and Instagram has shifted way almost to an extreme out of image sharing and into video sharing. And I know my whole feed is basically videos now. You rarely see images. And it's just the way that platforms and consumers are shifting, is they want to see video content. And so when we look at this conversation as a whole, I want to talk a little bit about how you put this into practice. How do you apply inbound marketing to social media platforms like this, and to short form video or to short form educational content? And there's an example that continues to ring true in my head. And if you've read They Ask You Answer, you know that we're a passionate pool company, I guess you could say. It's where They Ask You Answer emerged as an inbound framework, or an inbound business framework. And the TikToks that I see and hear about a lot are things like how to clean your pool, how to maintain a pool, the different types of pools. And it starts to align a lot with, these are educational platforms or educational tools. And yes, they're informational. And for some of them, like cleaning a pool, it can also be very satisfying to watch. I imagine a lot of us have seen, like, when you power wash something and it all just becomes really clean, I think we all smile and get a little giddy, because you're like, man, that was really nice to watch. And I feel a lot better after seeing that. But the way that some of these users are creating content, it's building a huge following, because they're also helping people learn how to do this themselves, or generating business. Again, with inbound, you want to give people the best answers to the questions that they have, and they're going to be looking for that. And when they find it, they're either going to say, I'm going to try this myself, or they're going to say, I need to pay someone to do this, because now I know this is exactly what my pool looks like, and this is what I need to do differently. Now, obviously, we use the pool example, but this can apply across the board. It could be local law, it could be insurance, it could be construction sites, it could be really anything. It could be about cleaning out your gutters. Like, it could be anything. But the most important thing is that these aren't some trends with fun sounds and people doing weird filters. It's just people saying, here's how I do what I do. And I've even seen it for SEO, like how to use Google Analytics, how to earn a featured snippet, how does a meta description work. I've seen these platforms and these users who create content on these platforms that really make it purely educational. They're not really making anything out of it either. It's not like they're getting paid a ton of money to do it, but they are just building followings and building community off these platforms through creating this kind of content.
And you think about, if you were to, and we'll talk about YouTube in a second, but if you're to go on YouTube and you want information about how to do something, and it could be like anything that you said, how to get a featured snippet, or how to clean your pool, anything like that. If you type that into the search bar on YouTube and a million videos come up, maybe I'm only speaking for myself, but I would be drawn to the video that's a minute long, as opposed to the video that's 20 minutes long.
It depends on the kind of content. I mean, that the only thing I'll push back on with that, John, is it's really, if people are looking for something that's in depth, they will seek out. Yeah, I think the average number is like YouTube really likes somewhere between like an 8 and 12 minute video. Like, they lean towards, once you hit 10 minutes, they're going to push that further. And that tends to be kind of the learning threshold, depending on what it is. But you see that for any kind of content too. Like the highlights of anything are going to be in that range. They're going to try and keep it around then.
Yeah, YouTube also likes 8 minutes plus, because they can put internal ads in the videos.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Like, they're pretty happy about that. I sure. Right. And I think, like, we're not saying you should abandon doing longer form content. And I think if I were looking for how to write a featured snippet, I'd probably go to the 1 minute version first, and then I would probably go to the 12-minute version. But there's something about that consumability and that kind of bite-sized nature of content that feels like a great way in. If I were to write a question into type a question into YouTube, and all of the videos that came back were like 12 minutes long, I kind of sort of sigh and roll my eyes, and be like, oh
Yeah.
God, 12 more minutes to like learn the simple thing that I want.
Right.
So a good reminder that we have to obsess over the way people learn, and we have to give them information the way they want to consume it. And usually that means in several different media of different lengths, of different sizes. And I think the big lesson we want everyone to walk away from this episode with is don't ignore short form content. We're not saying you should throw everything else out the window, of course, but this can be a really good supplement to the other work that you do. And I want to read this sort of stat of the episode that I think will resonate with a lot of people. YouTube reported last week that so sorry, to back up, YouTube has something called YouTube Shorts, which are videos of 60 seconds or shorter. They're kind of often oriented how a phone would be oriented.
Yeah, it's kind of meant for
They're
social sharing.
they're in a
Yeah.
carousel usually. They're very consumable. YouTube reported that 1.5 billion people are watching or engaging with YouTube Shorts per month. 1.5 billion people. And I want to put that in context because around 2 billion people use YouTube per month. So that means 75% of all YouTube users are engaging with this hyper short form, very consumable, social media-esque, 60 seconds or less, cell phone oriented content that I know at Impact, we have updated our strategy so that we're not just publishing YouTube videos, we're also publishing shorts. And what that means is we know that our watch time is going to go down because some of the videos we're publishing are only 30, 45, 60 seconds long. So you can't watch them any longer than that. But it allows us to, it sort of forces us to condense our message and give it in a really kind of digestible way. It also forces us to just add to the ways that we approach our audience. And that's really, I think, what this is all about, that your audience is learning in new ways. And if you are savvy and serious about connecting with them, you have to kind of keep your finger on the pulse. It's not trend chasing. It is being aware of where people hang out and how you can offer them value.
John, can I ask too? And you can speak from the marketing side for our team. Like, how formal are the shorter videos? Are they? What would you recommend? Like, I think when we think longer videos, they're a little more polished. They're a little more buttoned up. Are we following that trend, or are we looking at these shorter form content as like I'm going to grab my phone and I'm going to go just record it on my own?
Probably somewhere in between. I think the threshold for quality is lower than it's ever been. People want good videos, but they don't want overly produced sort of studio or corporate feeling content. And I think that makes tons of sense. Shorts and reels and things like that tend to be less formal, tend to be, sometimes they have music in the background. There might be kind of jump cuts to cut out things that feel superfluous so that you're really kind of trimming the fat and just giving the bare bones. So it's not necessarily like a selfie in the parking lot, but it is less formal, less rigid, less produced than a video we might have on our website or on a regular YouTube channel.
Got it. I bring it up because that might also bring our guard down a little bit. It might lower our shoulders a little bit as we look at posting on these platforms. And it makes me think of, we've talked about one-to-one video in the past and how when you're getting started with creating video content, especially for your sales team, like, and again, this Connor's going to step on his little pedestal and then he'll step back down. When we look at creating video content as a whole, informal content has become increasingly popular. Now, that doesn't mean if you're going to be doing a webinar or something, you shouldn't be sitting in your passenger seat of your car as you're getting driven to the airport and taking a video there. Like, you should be somewhere where it's professional. But John and I show up and record this podcast, and we're not in, button downs. We've got kind of our at-home setups. Like, I'm in my little office I've got a painting on the floor. John is in his living room and he's got furniture behind it. Like, the point is that you don't have to be super formal and professionalized for these videos to work either, especially if you take someone on site or if you're sitting down with someone to talk to them. It doesn't have to be this thing where it's a formal interview, or it doesn't have to be like you're facing the camera directly. Like, you can just be talking as you're doing something. And that also makes the content more relatable. It makes it more real. It feels like, oh, I thought of this and I wanted to record a video for everyone. And that's how we use video in the sales process too. And how, again, I think this transitions it and maybe puts a bow on it, John. This is how the inbound principles come back to us. Is all of this is producing video content that's helpful and perhaps educational, or at least informative for our audience. Doesn't require you to be buttoned up, because people see right through it. John, you were mentioning it earlier. Like, if it's super professional, people might just scroll past it. They may not want to engage with it. They want something where it feels like I'm talking to you, not you sat down and did a formal press conference and yada, yada, yada. And again, the inbound principles come together through that.
I think there's been a tendency for a long time to use production quality as a sort of slapdash metric of authority. And I think we do that on our websites too. And it's something that Marcus Sheridan will say, like, good content that's helpful and honest and trustworthy and trust building is going to be better than bad content on a beautiful website. Right. And, it's the same thing here. I think there's always been that tendency, like, the better the video looks, the more people will like it. I don't know, like, maybe that's true to an extent, but largely it's about, is this person, do they have a good answer? Are they, intelligent, well-spoken? Again, I'm not saying you have to script things and make them super formal. In fact, I'm saying just the opposite, that Connor and I are here in t-shirts and not, super dressed up. But we hope to convey our authority by what we say, by how we hold ourselves, and by the insights we provide. And I think the same is true of any video, any article you produce, really any content that is part of your inbound marketing initiative. If the quality is there, and I want to make sure that we're clear about what I mean about that. It's not high production value. If the quality is there, it'll resonate. And it's easy to be distracted by the fancy, shiny, flashy 4K and brand new, super sleek, fast loading website. But we've seen time and time again, that isn't the answer.
The only exception to that I can think of, John, is I forget, it's like slow-mo smash or whatever. They just destroy stuff in 8K super slow motion. And that can be pretty cool when you have it super zoomed in and everything and all of that. But absolutely, that'll be the exception that I'll leave there.
They're not selling slow motion slash. They're selling
probably not. But if they were selling the thing that it's like a compressor thing, whatever it is, if they were selling the compressor, now I might be talking a little bit about it, but nonetheless, to wrap us up, I think the action item for everyone as we're wrapping up this episode is explore what short form content could mean for you and for your audience. And I say you as in you as the consumer. Are you watching short form content and making purchasing decisions, exploring new avenues? It's more like the awareness piece of it. And I think that's where a lot of this can start too, is once you start thinking like your consumer, it makes it easy for you to translate that to your business. And so first off, pay attention to how you consume it. And as you start to be aware of how you are looking at the short form content, translate it to your business and how you sell and how you engage with your audience. But with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode. This has been another great episode of Solving Inbound. John, thank you as always for joining me. And thank you all for listening to this episode. We'd love to have a rating and we'd love to know how we did in this episode. So leave a comment, leave a like, leave a rating on any podcast platform you're listening to. And until next time, my friends, have a great day.